Hello everybody, welcome to Catherine Sews. Thanks so much for joining me today. I've done different videos on revamping t-shirts, including ways of dropping a neckline and making a neckline into a V. But I've had quite a few questions of people asking, what if a neckline is too big or too deep? Is there any way you can adjust that to bring the neckline up and in? So every situation you encounter is going to be different. I'm going to show you today a few different ways that you can make a neckline smaller. So I purposely thrifted a few t-shirts where the neckline is just too big. And so I'm going to just go through a few different scenarios and a few different ways that you can adapt that neckline so that you can wear your favorite t-shirts. So let's not waste any time. Let's just jump right in. Okay, so here's a situation with a t-shirt that is just, for an evening out, maybe I could do a neckline like that. But for a casual Saturday kind of t-shirt, that's just not me. And so I've thrifted this little lace top, and I'm just going to be taking the top edge of that and doing a little set in the U shape here. So that's going to be a super easy fix to make it into a t-shirt that I would wear on a regular basis. For this deep scoop neck, I've got the t-shirt inside out, and I'm going to use the neckband of this as the top. I think that seems good. Now if there's like a prominent pattern in the lace, I would try to center that. And I want to make sure I'm the same level here. 2 3/4, 2 3/4. Oh, well, that seems perfect. And then I'm just feeling through and marking the edge of my neckline. I can feel this edge. I'm just marking that. And then I'll just cut on that line. Now I could do a serged edge on this, but that lace is not going to fray at all. So I'm just going to jump right in here. I'll just even my piece up so that it's symmetrical. So I'll pin it here and then repin it from the other side. It looks to me a little too high right now. I'm just going to give it a quick try on before I even baste it. So I did try it on and it was way too high, and so I've lowered it. It looks nice now. I've got a really good matching thread in my machine. This lace one was a really lucky score, wasn't it? It's so perfect for this, so I did just get lucky there. I'm just going to sew right on top of that line, really small back tack, just so it's as discreet as possible. And then I'll trim off the excess lace on the back. My new stitch kind of blends right in. You can see it a bit, but I don't think anyone's going to be bothered by that. So since I lowered it down, I've got this excess. So just with small scissors, carefully trimming off the excess. And then just like that, this one is done. Oh my gosh, I really love that. I think that's so pretty. So this one is a win. I just think that's so pretty. And really it was a lot to do with the luck of finding just the perfect knit top. If I hadn't found that exact same shade of gray, I could have played around with different lace configurations there too. But this one that was a win. So here's another one where for me, that neckline would be more for an evening out. And so I'm gonna have some fun just putting like some little Pintucks right through the neck binding to create like a little pretty way that lifts up that neckline. It's really fast and easy, very beginner friendly. So let's give that one a try. I'm just going to put a little pin tuck every whatever that is, 1.5 inches. Maybe I'll start an inch from the point and then every 1.5 inches after that. A couple viewers have mentioned that they use a scrap of soap instead of wax, so I'm going to give that a try. Look at that, that's beautiful. Alrighty, thank you for that tip. Yeah, the soap is good. It smells nice. And then I'm just folding it in half just to double check that I'm even. Yep, good enough. So now on each one of my little soap marks, I'm going to just fold the neckband right in half. And I'm just going to sew close to that edge. Starting at an edge like this, I might have trouble with it getting tangled and yucky. So I'm going to start in the middle, go back, come in, and then back again. And I want to be consistent here with all of them. So I'm going to line up at the edge of my wide opening here. I'm going to line the folded edge up with that, so that I know that each one of these pleats is going to be exactly the same. There, so that's the idea. I'll have some threads to clean up, but that's the idea. I'm going to try that again. I want to have thread here to be able to pull so that it doesn't get sucked down like that. If it gets sucked down, just hit needle up, wiggle to disengage the thread, and then you should be okay. Before I trim my threads, I'm going to just try it on and make sure I'm happy, because if I'm not happy, I'm going to want those threads to start unpicking it. There, doesn't that make such a pretty neckline? Like, that's really nice, right? Doesn't raise it up a ton, like it doesn't make it sort of too modest. It just makes it so that I'm more comfortable to wear this out on a casual weekend day. I mean, that was lightning fast, and I think it's really pretty. So I hope you like that one too. Let's get on to the next one. So here's a situation where this neckline is fine. It's not bad at all. My mic is sort of pulling it askew, but it's not too low. But this top actually my mom just bought, and my mom is quite elderly, and so she is stooped forward. And when you lean forward, your V-neck gets to be a little sloppy. And so it doesn't have to come in a lot. It just needs to be neatened up a bit. And so I bought this like lingerie elastic, and I'm gonna try, I've never done this before, but I'm gonna try to just zigzag this to the inside just to keep this neckline a little more in place. For this one, I'm using a triple zigzag, like zig, 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 zag, zag, zag. I've got it set really wide, 7 millimeters wide, 1.4 millimeters long. So on a little scrap, it ends up looking like that, just so you can see. There's the elastic I'm going to be using, and I really don't want to stretch it much at all. I don't want to gather in this neckline. I just want to stabilize it. And I don't want to affect the V at all. So I'm not going to bring the elastic right down to the bottom of the V. I'll start maybe 1.5 inches or so away from the point of the V. So I'll start my back tack with it just not even stretched at all. Now I'm just going to be stretching this elastic really just slightly. And then maybe a little bit more as I get around the curve of the neck and at the back neck. I probably should have taken off that label before I got started here. Oh, darn it. So it's really gathering it in along the back neck, which I think is fine. I think that'll sit nicely on her, but I've kept it not gathery at the front. So the stretch here is really minimal. So you can see my triple zigzag a little bit, but I don't think that's gonna bother anybody. I think that's just fine. That was a nice easy fix. And the neckline is just hugging close in, and I think that's going to be much better for her. So even if she's stooped over, it's not going to become disorderly. So this neckline is just stretched out and just looking sloppy. It does have a double row of cover seaming here. So it's a little bit of unpicking. It's, you wouldn't bother doing this, honestly, unless you love the t-shirt. I don't necessarily love this t-shirt. I'm taking one for the team just to show you what you can do, because I'm sure that if I unpick this and make the neckband shorter, I'll be able to draw that neck in. But otherwise, I probably wouldn't bother unless I really love this t-shirt. I'll show you how I'm going to unpick it, and you can decide if you'd want to do this or not to your t-shirt. So first, I'm going to just remove that label. See how that's got the double line of stitching here? It would be so much easier if this was not top stitched, because see here, it's 2 layers. It is serged first and then cover seamed. 2 layers of kind of like serging on here that both have to get unpicked. So yeah, this would be a labor of love. Basically, it's just go in with your seam ripper, and you can see like these lines are already coming out on that side. Basically, I'm going to do what I need to do to remove that neckband, okay? The cover stitching is all out. Not saying that was any fun, but now I just want to pull out the regular serging. So underneath all that mess, you'll find your 2 needle threads from the serging, and you're just going to pull those out, and then the neckband will come off. Okay, once you get those 2 needle threads out, it'll start to all come off. A little while later, I've got that neckband off, cleaned up a million little tiny threads. I'm hoping that I can ease this neck in without distorting the stripes. The back is a solid navy, and so that makes it easier. I might just really focus on the back neck, but I am hoping to bring the whole thing up. So I just want to get a starting measurement. The easiest way to measure a neckline is in half, like that. And without stretching it at all, it's measuring 16, so 32 inches around. That's big. Interestingly, there's no seam in the band. The band is measuring 15 or 30. I want to take off at least 4 inches, right about there. There's no seam on this band, so I'll just be able to put a little seam wherever I want, doesn't matter where. Okay. Now I could stretch this neckband to fit that, but that kind of defeats my purpose. And so I'm going to start by running a little bit of a basting stitch all the way around this neckline. And I'm hoping to be able to pull that up without making it look like it's like gathered up or shrunken. With my machine set on the longest stitch length, I'm just unfolding the little bit of seam allowance. It definitely wants to roll in the way it was sewn. I think I'll stop at the shoulder seam so that I can kind of control the back separately from the front. So when you're doing a stitch like that, you don't do any back tacks and you keep your tails of thread long. I want to see if I can ease it in. Don't think of this as pulling the thread. Think of it as just holding the thread still and easing the fabric along like that. You don't want any puckers or gathers. You want it still to be smooth, but just kind of compressed. And then when I'm happy with that section, I'm just going to take the thread I've been holding and use it to pull up its bobbin thread. And then just tie those two together so that it's not going to just release all that fabric back again. That seems pretty good. So now I'll come at it the other way, and if I use the top thread on that side, then I have to use the top thread on this side. If I use the bobbin thread on one side and the top thread on the other, they kind of jam up and then it won't pull and slide around anymore. And then I'll knot off that section. And then along the back here is where I think I'll get most of the reduction. So now it's measuring 14 times 2, 28, compared to 32 it was before. So that is 4 inches smaller. That's what I was hoping for. And now my challenge is to make sure it just gets distributed evenly. So I made my new little seam, and yes, I was naughty and I left the white thread in. You can't even see it. That's fine. Okay, so that seam is going to be the center back. So if I fold it on that seam, and then directly opposite that is the center front. And if I bring those two together and then put a wax mark at the midway point there and the midway point here. So now this neckband is quarter marked, and now I want to quarter mark the shirt too. I could have done that before gathering it up. That would have actually been smart, because now I just kind of have to eyeball it to make sure that I've got that gathering even. And then the center front. Matching up the stripes helps me to make sure that I've got it even. If I bring that center front mark together with the center back mark, that'll show me the halfway point. Flip the shirt inside out. That little seam is going to go to the center back mark. They are right side together and all three raw edges together. There's my two halfway marks going together, center front mark, and the other halfway mark. And now a lot of patient pinning. Pin in between in each of these sections, pinning it in such a way that I'm not pinning in any little puckers. I want it to be as smooth as possible at the sewing line. I'm going to sew it on with that basting stitch again and double check it before I try it on. And then if it's good, then I'll serge. So I can double check as I go that the stripes look kind of straight and not distorted. They don't look like they're being stretched out or scrunched in. So that is looking pretty good. I'm just checking always to make sure that that bottom layer isn't folding in on me like that. Okay, I'm gonna try it on and see how that neck is. I just tried it on, and the neckline is just so much more reasonable. It just is great. You can see at the back here, I think it is a little gathery. I think that's just fine. And if that's what helps to shrink this neckline in, then I'm happy to do that. And yes, you could just zigzag these edges. Before I pull out that basting stitch, I'm thinking I might just put in a line of top stitching to kind of hold it in this shape. Because if I take out the basting stitch first, it really feels like it's just going to stretch all back out again. But if I get a line of top stitching in there first, then I won't lose my shape. I thought I was filming, but I wasn't. But I just ran around and did a little edge stitch all the way around. And now I'm just pulling out any of the basting stitch that shows. I'm just going to do a second line of top stitching, mainly because the holes are there from before where it had to. So I'm just going to try to get a second line in there. Yeah, that looks better with the second line. That neckline is just much more reasonable. Like, it feels a little more secure. It doesn't feel like it's just stretching off of me. I do notice there's a little distortion of the stripe, and I didn't notice it until after I'd put in 2 rows of top stitching. So I'm just going to live with that. And I think it's fine.
This one was the most laborious of the bunch and the least creative, the most sort of technically challenging. But I'm glad to know that that technique works, that if I do have a situation where the neck is just stretched out, I can remove the neckband, cut it down shorter, ease in that neck and reattach it. This is also the best technique if you're trying to make a neckline narrower, like less wide on the shoulder, especially since I kind of really brought it in at the back neck. It does make the neckline narrower. If the width of the neckline is more of the problem, then this would be the technique for you. And I wonder if you might be able to just unpick the back of the neck, make your little seam there, ease it in, and you don't even have to deal with the front. That might be good. Okay, I hope that gave you a few different ways to deal with necklines that are just too big or too deep. I hope you had fun with that. I hope you learned something. And if you did, you know what you gotta do. You gotta hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and leave a nice comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks so much for joining me today. And until next time on Catherine Sews, you take care.